Ever imagine that you could make a Kozuka and also extracting metallic iron from iron sand in the mini Tatara by yourself? In this video, I want to introduce you a city in Japan where you can do these activities and also to share our experience with you. We went to Seki, which is located in Gifu Prefecture. Most of you who is watching this video would have heard about Seki. And yes, you are right, Seki is the place where the famous Minoden was born. Minoden is one of the biggest 5 sword making traditions, or we call Gokaden in Japan. Many swordsmiths with Kane in their names were from Seki. The very famous swordsmiths who produced Saijo or Wazamono or the top rank katana such as Kanemoto and Kanesada came from here. We went to Nagaragawa to collect iron sand that is needed for mini Tatara activity. It should be something dark in color. And here we are, the iron sand. Since we need only a few kgs for our mini Tatara, we use the DIY magnetic harvesting tool for picking up the iron sand. It wasn't easy because the soil is very damp due to the rain. The saddest part, it wasn't enough at all for our mini Tatara. In actual scale, 14 tons of iron sand were used for Tatara Seitetsu. This is gonna take us forever if our method is used. So, how people in the past gathered so much iron sand, especially when there were not so much magnet? In the past, kanna nagashi was used for iron sand mining. What is kanna nagashi? It's actually a very simple method where you just need to dump a lot of soil into the river. As the river flows, the heavy iron sand will sediment in the river bank. Unfortunately, this method wasn't environmental friendly at all, because to collect 14 tons of iron sand, approximately 450 tons of soil from the mountain is needed. As you can imagine, the mountain will be flattened. Let's have a look at this peaceful town surrounded by mountains. Sorry guys, we didn't have chance to go to the actual place. So, let's go from Google Map. This town is near to Izumo, which is a place famous for Tatara Seitetsu. It used to be the place for harvesting iron sand. This place was actually a mountainous area. It is turned into a flat land after so many soil was harvested for kanna nagashi. However, the area with temple, shrine, and graves was avoided. Thus, small hill with grave such as this one remains. Kanna nagashi also causes big flood at downstream of the river. Accumulation of the soil from kanna nagashi in the riverbed causes the river to become shallow and leads to big flood during heavy rains. Due to the big impacts to the environment, kanna nagashi was prohibited since 1971 in Japan. The next thing is to prepare the charcoal for Tatara Seitetsu. It looks easy, but it's actually harder than we thought. Because the charcoal is hard and brittle, it breaks into uneven fragments easily if we cut it at the wrong angle. The charcoal has to be cut in even size in order to maintain stable heat. Here's the mini Tatara that we use for extracting iron from the iron sand. Thankfully, we were given extra 2 kg of iron sand since we only get 1 kg from the river. A total of 3 kg of iron sand is poured into this mini Tatara. The funny part is, we have to keep preparing the mini Tatara in order to keep the heat. In order to melt the iron, it has to be heated up to 1500 degrees. So, it's very important to constantly cover up the gap with mud in order to prevent the heat from escaping. However, the Tatara was very hot and Hito came up with a good idea. That is to throw a mud ball onto the gap. It's like throwing a baseball. The mini Tatara was dismantled in order to recover the tamahagane. Look at the red hot chunk there. This is the mixture of steel and charcoal. So from now on, we have to separate the steel from the charcoal. After all the efforts and time spent, it was quite sad to know that most of the steels were low quality and still contained high amount of carbon and impurities. To feel at small scale is still bearable. If 14 tons of iron sand ends up with low quality steel, it will be a big disaster. Due to time limitation and also the quality of the steel that we get from mini Tatara, we use the steel that was prepared in advance for the folding process. If you're interested to know more about the sparks, please refer to our previous video. We were told that this is how a pro would handle the big hammer. But since we are beginner, we can do it this way. If you look at his face, you will realize that the hammer is much heavier than he thought. Every hammering is like weightlifting. I kinda understand why in the past more than one person with otsuji is needed. If not, it will definitely be too tired just to hammering by one person. Because in this process, you have to hammer in a fast pace and on the right spot. If we hammer it too slow, the steel would cool down and it needs to be reheated again. If the steel is reheated frequently, it will affect the quality of the steel. You will lose more steel because oxidized layer will come off in each heating. And now it's time to heat the real thing. Hey Hito, make sure you hit it on the right time, on the right place, and also with the right force. Not hit on the master. Masaya continued to fold the steel with hammering machine. It's a very good modern solution for overcoming difficulties in getting apprentices to work under you. This shows how a modern technology helps in traditional craft. In Japan, it is illegal to make a blade that is longer than 15 cm by yourself, unless you have the license. Thus, we made Kozuka, which is kind of miniature katana. You can find some of the katanas or wakizashi come with Kozuka as a set. Hammering out the shape of Kozuka was quite challenging at the beginning because it was hard to control the shape when you are not used to hammering. Masaya helped us a lot in fine-tuning the shape. And here they are, the final product of Kozuka. The clay that you are seeing here is called yakiba tsuchi, which is a kind of clay paste that is put on the katana before yaki-ire to create hamon. Interestingly, every swordsmith has their own recipe for the clay paste. Unique hamon pattern will form depending on how you put the clay paste on the katana. Here comes the most excited and also the most difficult process, the yaki-ire, where katana is quenched to increase the hardness of the blade. Temperature control throughout the quenching process is very important. Badly controlled quenching will cause cracks on the blade or an undesired pattern of hamon. If you fail at this stage, all of your effort from the beginning will be lost. The whole blade has to be heated up evenly before quenching it in the water. Believe me, it is not easy just to heat up a blade that is around 15 cm. Heating up a long blade like katana must be very difficult. The Kozuka are roughly polished to remove the hardened clay. With a rough polish, the hamon on the Kozuka wasn't very visible. The most precious part in this trip is that we were able to converse a lot with Masaya and gain a lot of knowledge from him. We learned about the problems that one might face in the actual katana making process and also some useful tips for making a katana. This trip is really worth it and I highly recommend you to try this katana making process in Seki City. If you love unagi, there's a very nice shop serving very delicious unagi don. Please, you must try this out when you are in Seki. Thanks so much for following our journey until the end. I hope you enjoyed. See you in the next video. Goodbye. 力がない。怖くないけど。